All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this beautiful house with textures that we've modeled, and we are going to break it into different pieces. And so there's several different ways that we can do this. So I just want to show you just a couple of the ones that I'm thinking about. Um, like if we think about this in top-down view, go into shape, if I go into shaded, the way that Tatiana kind of broke this up. You can see there's kind of these pre-made chunks, and then like the whole thing is almost divided in half. And you can really see that on the bottom. Like she kind of like this is a chunk, this is a chunk, this. Like these are the chunks basically for the most part, and those are like how the textures play out as well, the way that she made it and the way that we modeled it. So that being said, um, how could you start to make this different? It's like, well, what if you cut in a straight line, you know, down the middle of one of these textures, and then it was then combined with this. And so what would that look like? It's like we can take a look. We take our lines here. We can type extrude curve, get a couple surfaces in here. And so like we're going to make this our chunk, right? So we can kind of grab all of this that would have all the relevant pieces in here, right? And we could type split, grab those. Oh, it's not what I wanted. Grab that, but not the cutting planes. Type split, select the cutting objects right there, and it'll go through and it will split this for us. Then we can type cap without deselecting, and it'll keep everything. And then what we should be able to do is just kind of deselect everything on the sides. And then look at this chunk we have. And so if I type group, like this could be one of the like pieces that we are then making, right? With these straight cuts. Um, I think this is fine. I think this is like cool and could be very interesting. But I think for me personally, I would love to see something maybe a little more like less orthogonal, maybe a little less orthogonal, right? So I grab that and then maybe like do something like this. Like I'm kind of really interested in maybe like a cut like this. Like what would this look like, right? So if I were to, grab all of this, deselect that, go ahead and type split, grab this, and type cap again, because these are all closed poly surfaces. You're seeing your textures kind of like readjust when this happens, but if I kind of line this up, I can start to maybe like deselect some of these pieces that aren't technically on my cut plane. Check this out, man. And if I hit group, did that did that group together? It did. And then I can ISO. Check this piece out, man. Like this to me, type ZSA, I can reorient myself, right? I think this is like super interesting where you're starting to get more than one texture in one chunk, and maybe it's like different pieces and stuff. And so basically we need 6 to 8 of these pieces. And really it just becomes like, how do we want to get there? And that is the fun part that is like completely up to you. It's kind of like making the rocks. You just iterate and kind of play around with it. But so like right now we have 3 chunks. I could take, you know, I could take another line somehow and maybe I want to cut like this way, maybe. And this would cut through our other chunk over here. Um, I don't even know where that line went, but maybe it's better to use since we already have these planes, and I would keep these planes on maybe like a new layer. I do this like cutting planes. We can keep these on that layer just so we don't lose the things we did. Like we want to keep kind of a record of what we did to this. But just kind of exploring like what could be super interesting cuts to make. I'd love this almost this like 90 degrees. Maybe we can just get super like, let's like cut through this whole thing. See what we get, right? And then we're cutting through, we're gonna have like a little piece over here, maybe. Um, like there's so much that we could do. The possibilities are kind of endless. And so you could have orthogonal cuts, diagonal cuts. Um, so let's go ahead and do that where we go ahead and grab all our stuff, deselect our other cutting planes, but make sure that we're grabbing everything. Oh, interesting. That line is grouped in there. So we're going to keep that line then. And then we're going to type split, grab our big fella right here. Cap. And then I'd love to deselect half of these. See, now the problem is we've already grouped our one, so we kind of have to ungroup this. So I'm going to try and do just over the line right there. Deselect that, deselect those, deselect that. And this is kind of like, since this was already grouped together, it's like, do we want this to also be cut? I'm going to actually say no, I don't. And so I can take this and then maybe deselect, or we want to select that, but I'm going to group this. It's like, so that's a piece. These over here can be pieces. Let's see, go ahead and that. And so you're just kind of like starting to cut this thing up. So we can start deselecting certain chunks, right? I group that together. So when we, oh, always isolate before you ungroup. You can like move this to that cutting plane layer. And we can just turn that layer off. So we have this, move this together, everything. So we got piece one, piece two is kind of huge. So I'm thinking we cut this in half. Piece three right here is kind of big. I think these are kind of our two finished pieces almost. We have like two on the end, and then these I think could maybe be tinkered with a little more. I'd love to maybe like isolate this, and let's take a cutting plane with us. And remember, our base is locked, so we're like not cutting through that, but maybe just like a slight tilt this way, right? It's just, and I'm going to delete these lines down here. Oh, ungroup, and delete those. And I would recommend doing this in the rendered view just so you can see the impact it has on your textures. So make sure this is totally cutting through here. I'm going to say split, select the cutting object. I would not just go with the first one you try. Like, please experiment around with this, because we're going to have so much fun, especially once we start like transforming our pieces too. Because this is just making the pieces. So let's see, I'm gonna hit group. And looks like our stairs are kind of doing their own thing right now. I think that's fine. Like that. Rest of this stuff I can group together. Might be cool to get like a fun cut of that, but so if we show this, put some of these on this cutting plane layer. Let's see what we got. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I guess everything left over here, I guess by default is kind of like 6, right? So I think so it says 6 to 8 in the brief. I would love to see 8. I'm starting with 6 just for the sake of time, but yeah, I think this is like a really lovely start. So now let's just get a better look at some of our pieces here. Well, I think this is lovely. And let's say the stairs are part of this. That's actually like quite a lovely view of the pieces, I think. I like that a lot. So now that we have these pieces, we can start to transform them, okay? And so let's look at some of the ways we can start to do that. In the brief, we've kind of like called out certain things. Scaling, obviously making things larger, smaller, mirroring, rotating, flipping, moving, copying, booleaning things together, rotating, flipping, shifting, cutting, deleting, shearing. Like let's try some of that out, right? First off, I'm going to save a copy of this. That's 3D project 3, say pieces. I have the little all caps name in here is, oh, I might have spelled that wrong, low key. No, I think I did. I think I spelled it right. I'll cut that out in post, but anyways, so I've saved off a new file of this. And really, I think I just want to start showing you guys commands. So like, for example, I think this is a really great one to work with. Ooh, it looks like this is one of the pieces got out of it. So grab all this, all that, and just group that together. And let's type in shear. Now, a lot of these individual commands actually have the individual videos of, right? So I kind of want to make it shear this way. So I'm thinking if I draw a z-axis, right, top to bottom. Whoa. Whoa. So are we seeing what's happening here? If I make my shear angle, let's say 60, it is not supposed to look like that. So we're going to undo that and we're going to try it again. And we're going to grab like an x-axis line, right? This is kind of what I was thinking, but doing this in the z-axis. So we can control this angle by either typing in a specific angle or just like playing around with it, right? So I kind of wanted it to shear in. That's why I had drawn a vertical line at first, but it didn't seem to like the way I was thinking about it. So let's go ahead. And I think the reason why that is because we're in perspective view. And a lot of times, just because of the way the 3D model works, it sometimes isn't a huge fan of you uh, shearing when you're not in the correct view, right? So if I'm looking at this, if I get this drawn in this view, there we go. We can start to have greater control over it. Now, unfortunately, it's snapping to a bunch of stuff, but this is kind of what I was going for, right? And so then we can go back and see. It's like, okay, this is like super sheared. We got this really awesome kind of like series of steps happening, right? So then we could do, I'm thinking, what if, like, I love this piece. I think this piece is so interesting. What if this piece was just like twice as big, you know? Like what we could do also is we could only change it in one direction. So if I type 2 in that direction, it's stretching it just one way. Or you can even do it in like 2 axes instead of scaling it uniformly in 3 axes. So we get this really interesting like shape starting to happen. And then we can even take something like this and start to like, so we could rotate it 90 degrees, right? And start to like have those like perfect rotations. But what if we laid it along this axis right here, right? So if I grabbed like this point, grabbed it right there, rotate 3D, grab that point, and I might have to turn off near for this because it's kind of being a little finicky, but I even want to grab this. Oh, you know what? It just didn't like the axis I picked. So again, take 3D, went like midpoint to midpoint. You could grab this and start to rotate it, right, to be orthogonal. And sometimes it'll snap for me, which is like kind of great. I can see now I need to turn near back on, start to like adjust this stuff. And this stuff doesn't have to fit like super clean on the base if you don't want it to. Um, and then we can start like our objects can start to like intersect each other, um, make all of these different really fun forms. Um, and this thing does not have to look like a building. It does not have to respect the laws of gravity. I think it is going to be much more interesting when it doesn't. Um, and yeah, we're just kind of messing around with it at this point. And um, thinking about it as I was modeling, honestly, when we split this into pieces, it probably would have been good to cap these surfaces. It's not going to cap a surface that's cut um, in 2 ways. And I know we were hitting cap, but sometimes it won't do it. But that time it was very forgiving to me. I just grabbed that whole selection and capped it. Because we want to see those clean edges. But even just starting to kind of play around with this, like you can start to just get real gnarly with this. And I know one of the things is copying and Boolean. You can copy, you can Boolean. I wouldn't go too crazy with just like making copies, but I'm also just like really excited to kind of give you guys the freedom to start to like mess around with this stuff. Like when you Boolean together, I'll be a little careful with that because it'll like kind of screw up the textures potentially. But you could group pieces together like this, um, start to get some like really funky geometry. And if you need inspo, again, you can just kind of like look back at the brief, just be like, oh, I could like mirror a piece. I could rotate, you know, my fragments. I could flip fragments around. And so we want really to be creating something that is like not anything like the original house, and it can be as chaotic and crazy as we want it to be. But we want like we're seeing kind of like artifacts of that house through the textures, right? And so like I would almost start to like really stretch some of this. And like we can go back in and like maybe like reapply the textures, or maybe we can like shrink this down even. Uh Give this some like height to it. It's up here, right? Then we've got this piece back here we haven't really messed with, and it's like, what if this was like a like very interested in what this could become as like a maybe like almost like buttresses on either side of this. You guys will learn about that in history. Um, but yeah, just this like kind of there's not really a right way to do it. I'm sure there's always probably a wrong way to do something. But it's just kind of like feel it out. Find something that you really like something that I'm looking at right here is like I kind of love this moment, but I feel like all of these gray textures now are like kind of aligning, and I don't actually want that to happen. I want there to be a little variety, but I love the form of this, which is um so it's kind of like a little frustrating almost. I feel like I maybe have to like like pull this back, and we can like rotate this down almost. But I would caution you to avoid anything that even starts to get a little orthogonal. Like there's probably a good way to like maybe nestle this in here. Um, Start to like rotate 3D. I would encourage it to be like one object in the sense that like everything is at least kind of like touching. Um, but yeah, like we you can just kind of keep playing with it. It's more art than science. Uh, that is kind of like the beauty of it is it is both art and science, but I think in this instance it might be a little more art. So we can just like like I'm kind of envisioning this shape doing something like that, which is like super lovely, I think. Yeah, and so this is starting to like break that up a little bit. This piece, I think I want just like maybe a little more height to this, but like this obviously is a little bit extreme in that sense, but this is like this is kind of cool. This is kind of cool, but I feel like this almost like doesn't work, this piece right here. So maybe if we like flip this 180, start to like really experiment with what we're doing here. It's like rotating around, maybe like really odd degrees. But I kind of don't love that that's just like a flat face. Um, and like these pieces, this is why you always save a copy, right? I saved a copy of this file in case I needed to like reference my old pieces because these are like unrecognizable from their original shape. And so you guys are all going to start with like a similar kit of parts and then end with something that is kind of a little more unbelievable. But I think this is like really lovely. And so basically the next thing we're going to do is like kind of dive into setting up like a 1 point perspective of it and rendering it. And so we're going to get like some cool interior shots of this. But we'll dive into that in the next video. Thank you for locking in with me, and we will keep going. See you guys.